What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. Okay, let's bang out some mailbag questions. With no show on New Year's, with the football games going over the next couple days, I thought I wanted to bang some out right now. I have a million at John Middlekauff is the Instagram fire in those DMs. Very, very easy to get involved. We'll start with Parker, who brings up a good point. With the Colts losing in horrific fashion versus the Giants, will there ever be an accountability with this franchise? Ballard has one playoff win, and it was gifted by luck. No division titles in 8 years. Every other team in the South has won the division twice. Didn't know that. You audibly said Jesus last week's mailbag when informed the Colts hadn't won the division since 2014. Colin seems to think the Colts have a good roster, which is obviously a horrible take considering they've lost many embarrassing games these past couple years. For example, is there a reason that Ballard always gets a pass, but the blame always gets pointed at AR? Seems insane to me. I don't give a flying fuck that he's well liked. I agree. If I was a Colts fan, I'd be done. McAfee went scorched earth on them on Twitter. This year's embarrassing. There's no, I mean, that gutless performance against the Giants. Malik Neighbors a really talented player, but I mean, he looked like Randy Moss meets Justin Jefferson out there against you guys. Obviously, the Anthony Richardson tap out situation. Clearly, some of the things in McAfee's tweet about guys not working hard, guys not focused, guys not preparing. Like the franchise is broken. There's no way around it. Relative to what it was with Peyton Manning, and even with early Andrew Luck, what it is now is I don't know the answer. Now the owner's a kook. Is he going to fire Ballard? And you wouldn't think he's going to fire Shane Steichen, but I don't know what to tell you. I mean, yesterday was you could say yesterday was a low, but the season's been pretty bad. It really has. I mean, the Anthony Richardson situation is bad. I would say the overall play of the team. Now part of that is I think the expectation. I picked them to make the playoffs, so shows you what I know. But yeah, I mean, it sucks. You guys are in a weird spot. Huge fan of the show. Saw this and immediately thought of you. You might have already seen it, but it's a crazy statistic. In the last 22 years, the 49ers have either made an NFC championship game or missed the playoffs. It actually spans when you say 22 years. They were so terrible in the 2000s. Like when I was in college, they were so god awful with Mike Nolan and Mike Singletary. They were just never sniffing the playoffs. They've really, once Harbaugh got there, made the playoffs 3 times, and then with Kyle, made the playoffs 4 times. And obviously, every time they made the playoffs, they'd gone to the NFC Championship. I think 3 of those 7, they went to the Super Bowl. But, yeah, it's wild. Here are the scenarios that's going to happen with Darnold. He signs a 3-year deal, making 35 to 45 per season. They give him the non-exclusive franchise tag, projected at $36 million. Another team can offer Darnold more, and if he takes it, he gets 2 first-round picks, or Minnesota does. Darnold signs the exclusive franchise tag, $41 million. We run it back with Darnold. If he is demanding $55 million on his next contract, we either add void years to the contract and keep him, or we make a decision to move on with J.J. I believe they would move on if KOC thinks J.J. can be 85-90% as productive as Darnold. Having J.J. actually gives us leverage with Darnold. He knows we like J.J. and won't overpay. I will bet my entire life savings that Darnold is on the team next year. There is no scenario with J.J. being hurt that we don't at least tag Darnold for 1 season. Please look at the message. I watch every single one of your podcasts. My dream is to work for the Vikings. God, this fucking cold. I don't know how I got hit with it, but everyone around in my life was sick and I avoided it, but it got me today. It's bad. I would say that I think we get too caught up in per year. I see this a lot with the Purdy conversation. 40 million a year, 50 million a year, 60 million a year. Like, tell me what the contract guaranteed number is. That's what we're dealing with. What is the guaranteed? What's the true guarantee on his contract? Is it 50 million? Is it 200 million? Right? Like, I don't care what Trevor Lawrence makes per year because that's not how NFL contracts are paid. It's about guaranteed money and signing bonuses. Jordan Love's like whatever, 50 million a year. He got a $75 million signing bonus. So it's not like the way he's paid, he got $75 million in 1 year. It's not like he will get 50 next year. It's not the way it works. So I think we get really caught up in the numbers. It's like, do you want to give him like a 5 year contract? Do you want to give him like a Tua Tagovailoa Jordan Love contract? Because if I was Sam Darnold, like that's what I would be in the mood for. Do you think the Browns would put in a call to the Vikings about J.J. McCarthy? The Vikings are likely to give Darnold a contract based on how well he has performed. And with him still being reasonably young, we could make McCarthy the odd man out. I think, I mean, honestly, I haven't really thought too much about 25 with J.J. McCarthy, just assuming Sam Darnold's still on the team. What I do believe, though, is that if you're the Vikings, you just keep J.J. McCarthy around because like his value diminished. He tore his knee and then had to have another surgery. So even if you really like J.J. McCarthy, he's been in the league. One of the years off his rookie contract is gone, and he had knee surgery twice. So, like, I was thinking about this today, actually, in the shower. It's crazy what your thoughts are when you're just daydreaming about football. I don't know if could they get a second round pick for him? Like, I don't think you would get a first round pick for a guy who has not played and who got injured year one, even if people really liked him, because a lot changed since the draft. One, you just miss out on a year of the contract, and two, he's injured. So I would say that I think they're both on the team next year. I'd be stunned if they traded JJ McCarthy. Stunned. Found you on the radio in 2017 because of the Reuben Foster pre-draft hype and have been a diehard listener ever since. Reuben Foster was the Alabama linebacker who the 49ers drafted in the first round, who I don't think he made it through year one. He got in trouble a couple times, and it was a disaster. Very talented player. How would you relate the Vikings and the Darnold situation of having JJ quote unquote learning to the Niners with Jimmy and Lance? Obviously, Sam is light years better than Jimmy, but if Darnold were to leave, they'd be in the headlines and likely regress. The Niners got lucky that Brock bailed them out in of that conversation for a year and a half. I I think you bring up a decent parallel, right? The Vikings, I mean, they're a game away from being the number one seed. And if you're the number one seed, I mean, you're 60 minutes away from being in the NFC Championship game. So I think they're in a situation where when you have a known quantity, anytime you go to this unknown, there is a huge amount of risk. Because now JJ had played at Michigan. Trey Lance played at North Dakota State. So, like, one guy is much more equipped to come into college or coming from college. He played for Jim Harbaugh to have success in the NFL. But there is no guarantee that he's going to have success in the NFL. None. So to me, you get a guy who was raw, who needed some work, and you have a ready-made competitive team. Like, part of the reason they are so good this year is Sam Darnold's explosive arm. Like, part of the reason they are dominating is he like throws 2 or 3 touchdowns a game because they don't have like the 85 Bears defense. I mean, they're good on defense, but look at their personnel. So to me, a huge part of their success when you watch them is their explosive passing game. You know, the thing with Jimmy is like it was easy to justify. It's like, well, he hands the ball off. You know, he's not even throwing like 25 touchdowns. Sam Darnold's going to throw 36, 37 touchdowns. And it feels like that's a sustainable thing because Addison's in his second year. Justin Jefferson's under contract. You got Hawkinson back. Naylor's good. We know they're going to have good running backs with KOC. So I think it's less about like, you know, Aaron Rodgers started to diminish and he started butting heads with the coach and the GM. So it was like, you know what? Fuck you. We're going to go with Jordan. And it was extremely risky. But it was like it had run its course. When they had decided to essentially move on from Jimmy, it wasn't because Trey Lance was better than Jimmy. He was not. There is no scenario on this planet where Trey Lance could have beaten out Jimmy Garoppolo. So what did they do? They told Jimmy Garoppolo, "You're not coming back," which is ironic because then he ended up coming back because they couldn't trade him because he was injured, and Trey Lance gets hurt in the second game, which the way it was trending, Trey Lance was going to get benched. But Jimmy was still around. It was one of the most bizarre scenarios and situations I've ever seen in my entire life. uh, Sports or non-sport. It was crazy. But they got lucky that it played out that way because if he hadn't been there, they would have been screwed. I doubt Purdy would have looked as good if Purdy would have had to come in week 2 like Jimmy did instead of coming in later in the season. So I just think this is pretty easy. You got JJ under contract. You're on this team. You got Sam Darnold, who you can franchise or give a long term contract. He's going to be on this team. And if Sam ever were to get hurt, you got JJ as a backup. If JJ can pump up his value and Sam can continue to dominate, you can flip JJ like the Patriots once did with Jimmy Garoppolo. And that's part of the reason why you invest in high level coaches because JJ McCarthy's value should improve, right? Jimmy Garoppolo, he started like a game and a half when Tom Brady got suspended for Deflategate. And he got injured. I think it was against the Dolphins, and he hurt his shoulder. And Jacoby played the next couple games. So the only thing anyone in the NFL had to go off on Jimmy Garoppolo was preseason games and a game and a half of NFL football. And the 49ers gave him a high second round pick. So it's like, I know you drafted him 11th, but if you use him as your backup quarterback for a couple years and then one day trade him for like a second and a third round pick, that's pretty good value. It's not the end of the world, especially with a quarterback. There's no other position where you could draft and he could really not play, and then you could trade him for a second and a third round pick. So he still has a lot of value to the Vikings. God, we get a lot of JJ Sam Darnold questions. I this is more about trading him. I just don't think you trade him now. What's the point of trading him? Like you have the asset under contract with you. You've done some work. Like you need a backup quarterback. You've already paid him because he was a first round pick. Like my guess is he's not making nothing. So his contract, JJ McCarthy signed a 4 year. They gave him $21 million, and his signing bonus is $12 million. So the Vikings paid him $12 million, and he basically averages like. I'm trying to see how this is kind of confusing. Like $5-6 million a year, essentially. His cap hits are like 3, 4, 5, 6. So his contract's not crazy. You got a backup quarterback. I don't think it's that crazy just to keep him. I really don't. And that's what I would imagine they end up doing. It's the most wonderful time of year for getting in on all the hoops, football, and hockey action at the DraftKings Sportsbook. It's the season of giving, and we're being gifted college football and basketball, pro football and basketball, and pro hockey too, almost 24/7. So many games every day, so many opportunities to place your first bet. Try betting on something simple, like picking a team to win. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app and place your bet. And here's a gift for all new customers. Bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the code JOHN. That's code JOHN for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. When you bet just $5. Happy holidays from DraftKings. The crown is yours. Big Texans fan here. This team is incredibly confusing. They have great players everywhere on the field and a coaching staff that everyone was very high on before the season. Obviously, Stroud's shoulder is hurt and can semi-excuse the poor accuracy of late. But what more does the team need to do? Is it as simple as drafting and signing offensive line help? Or bigger changes needed, such as firing Slowick? Would absolutely love them to get Dayball if available. Um, I'd be a little surprised if they fired Slowick after one kind of weird year. I mean, just last year he was having like the best rookie season for a quarterback in my life, and now he's just a village idiot. Now, it has looked rough, and obviously he hasn't been good this year. But I would say the offensive line, the guard and center spots are killing them. CJ's under duress constantly, and he's not playing well. So maybe you just chalk this up. Everyone thinks you're going to lose in the playoffs. You got nothing to lose. Like, why don't you win that game? It'd be crazy how much we would look at the success of this season if I told you that they won a home playoff game. And they're going to be an underdog in that game. I just don't think everyone's going to say they're just a lock to lose. I don't know. Playoffs are weird. What do you think should be the number one quarterback taken in this draft? Ward or Sanders? As a Giants fan, I would take Cam Ward over Sanders any day of the week. I think one thing that no one is discussing are the intangibles that Cam Ward brings to the table. Shedeur is a spoiled kid, and I'm convinced that when he struggles, he will lash out at the media and be a locker room cancer. On the other hand, Ward is a natural born leader who has risen to the occasion at every level. And being a zero-star recruit out of high school, he's a great kid and single-handedly carried the Miami team to 10 wins. Not to mention, he has a better arm and higher upside than Shedeur. What are your thoughts? I think Shedeur's a pretty good player. I mean, I've watched a lot of Colorado this year. I bet on him a decent amount. I think he's pretty good. Cam Ward has a better arm. Shedeur's arm is average for NFL standards. Cam Ward has a high-end arm. I think the character stuff, I just think the Buffalo situation, like they're just such a polarizing. I mean, I see so many people on Instagram talking about this 20-year-old's girlfriend, and it's like, come on, guys, what are we talking about? And maybe it'll turn out to be right in a couple years, but I think we're overanalyzing. Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter are treated like NBA players. Like the microscope they're under is pretty crazy. And I can't pretend like I haven't talked to buddies that like I haven't heard bad things coming out. So I think we overemphasize, like, yeah, there were some tweets last year about a guy transferring away. Dion did it too. I mean, you're kind of getting to Dion. Now the difference is Dion was one of the great talents in the history of sports. Shedeur is not that. I've always kind of sneaky like Shiloh, but I have a soft spot for hard hitting safeties, and Shiloh will fuck you up if you come over the middle. Some people call him dirty. I just call him a football player. I like. I've always enjoyed watching Shiloh, but I think that I don't think that it's a lock. I don't by any means think it's a lock that one of these quarterbacks go number one overall. But I also don't think it's a good draft. So now that I think about it, like, why wouldn't they? It's not like, Myles Garrett or Trent Williams or some like all time great pass rusher or left tackles in this draft. Tony Baselli, Orlando Pace, something like that. There's no like Bosa brother or something. People are always like, why do you say Bosa, not TJ Watt? Well, TJ Watt went 27th. It's funny. I asked a buddy one time, I was watching a Steeler game earlier this year, and I remember texting some scouts, and I was like, how did this guy go 27th? They're like, well, he wasn't remotely this good in college. And then I remember looking at TJ like he was a tight end, kind of like JJ, changed positions. He really was a 1 year wonder. But looking back, it's kind of crazy. Palmer here, big fan of the pod and your takes. On your most recent pod, 12/27/24, you mentioned how Mario Cristobal was a really good recruiter for Oregon and how big brown bags of cash were being paid under the table for players in college before NIL. My question is about Nick Saban and this phenomenon. I recently saw a couple clips on Instagram from the McAfee show. The first came from College Game Day before the Notre Dame Indiana game, where Shane Gillis poked fun at Saban for bringing in talent with these so-called bags of money, to paraphrase, which Nick obviously denied. Later, I saw Nick Saban go on McAfee show and double down on his claim. The program never had any involvement on under-the-table transactions to recruit the best players to Alabama, creating value for players with degrees. Do you think this is true? I think it's fucking laughable. Of course they were paying players. So was every good program. I mean, this is college football. If in college football and college basketball you try to talk like that, pre 2021 and you were a dominant program, you're just a blatant liar. And listen, like you don't need to lie anymore. No one cares that you were giving guys 30, 40. They weren't giving guys millions of dollars, but they were paying players. All these programs were forever. Coach K paying players. There's nothing wrong with it. Why are these guys so obsessed? Like, we don't care anymore. Cam Ward literally got paid to play a bowl game and then quit at halftime. Like, why? It's like, we don't pay. Like, now, here's the thing where they have plausible deniability, they weren't the guys handing him the money. You know, when you went to play for one of these top 10 basketball programs or top 10 football programs, they don't hand, the head coach isn't handing you the briefcase of cash, but you're getting the cash. Of course they were paying players. There's nothing wrong with it. But Saban acting like that is a little, give me a fucking break. It's what I appreciate with Belichick. Belichick's like, I would never work in college. And then the rules went out the door. He's like, wait, we can just openly pay players? I'm in. Saban's like, we just created value. Yeah, you did. By helping them get better at football while you were paying them under the table. I think some of these guys struggle because, I mean, and I don't, maybe he doesn't want to get, I don't even know. Who cares? None of it matters. None of it matters. They're literally just, they're not supposed to pay to play now. It's supposed to be NIL, right? Like I get a marketing deal where I'm literally just paying you cash for nothing. But this notion that John Wooden was paying players. I mean, they had like one of the biggest boosters in the country in like the 60s and 70s. I think his name was like Sam Walton. He was an LA guy. I mean, there's never been a good program who has consistently won in football or basketball that wasn't funneling money to those players in some form or fashion. I remember RIP Lute Olson is I worked for a guy, Rich Ellerson, who was the coach at Cal Poly, and he coached at Arizona in the 90s, like Teddy Bruschi, and they had some pretty good teams at Arizona. They were called Desert Swarm. Their defense was really good. And Ellerson, I'm pretty sure he was the defensive coordinator at the time. Dick Tomey was the head coach. And this is the heyday of Arizona basketball. And it's like Mike Bibby, Miles Simon, bunch of dudes. I mean, they were like winning national championships and competing for national championships and going to the Final Four every year. And he walked into a staff meeting one time. He's like, where'd all those awesome cars in the parking lot come from? Turns out it was the basketball team's cars. This is like 1998. And someone hit him like, hey, don't talk about that. Saban acting like they were just like giving guys a meal plan. I mean, fuck out of here. You can't let the days of just lying to our faces. You could pull that off in the 80s, the 90s. Everything was just like you could just lie through your teeth. Like, we've sniffed you all out. We know everything that's going on, and there's nothing wrong with it. The way some of these programs used to operate, hell, I've been told the way it's working in college football right now is like there's above board and there's below board in NIL because it's like, hey, you want $500,000? Well, if I give you $500,000 in NIL, you have to pay taxes on that $500,000 1099. So hey, I can get you $500,000, but I'll get a couple hundred under the table. So guess what? Untraceable, you don't have to pay, but you're getting the same money. You're actually taking home more because taxes, Uncle Sam, the IRS, never knocking on your door. I'm just so tired of all these people fucking lying through their teeth and just thinking like, oh yeah, he's just making sure you came to Alabama because he was going to teach you how to hold the edge. No, you came to Alabama because your program was sweet. You'd funnel them cash, and it was a win-win for everybody. I mean, give me a break. Been a fan since I heard you on. Colin, question for the mailbag. With KC locking up the one seed, who do you think Andy and Mahomes would rather see in Arrowhead for the conference final? I think they would 100% rather see Lamar Jackson. We witnessed what they did to Lamar Jackson last year. So now I don't think if Lamar's going to play like he's been playing, I think the gap's much smaller. Last year at the same time, they were more fearful of Josh Allen than Lamar Jackson. But at the end of the day, like you're gonna have to beat, more than likely they're gonna have to beat Herbert and Lamar or Josh to go to the Super Bowl. That's what they're gonna have to do. Question for the podcast. Love the show, avid listener. Since there's aren't a lot of top end quarterbacks, who is a sleeper to go higher to a quarterback needy team? My pick is Kyle McCord. Did Kyle McCord declare for the draft? Can confirm nor deny. Kyle McCord mum on NFL draft. So he hasn't officially announced. I'll be honest. I watched the Holiday Bowl. I was kind of blown away. I'm like, this guy can sling it. Like Kyle McCord is below the dude at Indiana. I would take Kyle McCord over Rourke. Yeah, Kyle McCord. This draft, it's like Kyle McCord, Dylan Gabriel, who's like 5'11, Jackson Dart, who I'm just not sure is that good, Rourke, who I just cannot take seriously, Quinn Ewers, who might stay in college, Beck, who has a torn UCL, Jalen Milrow, who might stay in college, Ward and Sanders. This quarterback class is fucking horrendous. Like it is really bad, especially when you look at Caleb Williams starter, Jaden Daniels starter, Drake May starter, Bo Nix starter, Michael Penix starter. And it took Sam Darnold having like an MVP season for J.J. Now, J.J. was hurt, but you know what I mean. This class is horrendous. I like the Kyle McCord pick. Okay, last question. Saban acting like we give him an extra smoothie. That's how we get him to come to Alabama. Come on, man. This could be a question for the offseason. As a huge fan of both college and the NFL, I was curious to hear your thoughts around why we see so many more fights with fans in the stands in the NFL versus college. I get not every college football stadium serves alcohol, but I've been to night games at LSU, OU, Bama, and several other stadiums that do serve beer on top of the tailgate scene. I've seen some fights at college games, but not as many as I've seen at NFL games with fully grown men. You'd think college games with young, drunk college kids would have more fights, yet I see way more fights at NFL games in person and on social media with adults. Curious to hear your thoughts. I don't really have a theory on this one, beside obviously, like you said, alcohol plays a part in both. You're tailgating, you're drinking, you're amped up. In the NFL, it's Sunday. I would imagine most people that are brawling, you know, eh, on Sunday are going to work the next day. I do think if you look at most of the fights, they're not happening in like luxury suites or the lower bowl. They're happening at the upper bowl. So it's just cheaper to get in. And, it's a certain demo of a guy. I just think that I don't know if he's mad at the world. I don't know. What are you fucking fighting about? Especially when you see people fighting over, they're the same, like they're on the same team. They're both wearing the jerseys. But I think there's an economic aspect of this. I would say pretty consistently, they're the upper bowl. I would say pretty consistently, it just looks like they are beyond fucking intoxicated and arguing about nothing. So it's just pretty low level morons fighting. I can't imagine going to a game and getting into a fight. I mean, honestly, I can't imagine. And I don't know if I've seen that many. Um, and I was going to Raider and 49er games at the Coliseum and Candlestick. But like you, I mean, I see a lot of them on social media, and I think they all have a pretty consistent theme. Booze, guys kind of, I don't know, maybe they had a fucking rough day. Maybe they're just angry at the world. Maybe they're amped up watching football. I don't know. But I can't really relate to like paying money to go to something then to get into a fight, especially in the quarters. Like you're in the upper bowl, there ain't that much room to move. So yeah, I mean, I some of these brawls too, where guys are like getting their nose shattered. It's like you guys are fucking idiots. What a loser. Listen, and I hate calling fans losers because they're the heartbeat of everything we do, especially what I do. But like if you're going and getting into huge brawls, especially when you're like rolling over seats and when women are there, like it's like, what are you guys? What an awful look. Like what how does I don't quite understand how it happens, but it pretty consistently happens. Okay, adios. Have a great day. Talk to you soon.